Who has ever wondered what might be hiding behind the walls of your apartment or house? In the basement? In the attic? Behind a closed storage door? Or even on the other side of the mirror? Sometimes what people think of as traces of the past does not return in memories, but in the very real present. Shadows, footsteps, strange sounds, and objects that are no longer where you left them can quietly become part of someone's daily life. Tonight you will hear stories about exactly that, about how the ghosts of the past can turn into a harsh reality in the present. Are you sure you are really alone at home right now? I was around 7 years old. My brother was about 10. We had stayed up way past our bedtime, and our mom had just woken up on the couch and was sending us off to bed. Our dad was working construction in another city at the time and would be gone for days or even weeks at a stretch. So it was just the three of us for long periods. The layout of our house was simple enough. Up the stairs and to the right was my parents' bedroom. To the left was a hallway. Follow it and turn left again, and you would reach my brother's room. At the far end of that same hallway was my room, sitting directly across from the bathroom. Both ends of the hallway had glass doors that we always kept locked and rarely used. The one near my room led out to a balcony overlooking the yard, and the one near my brother's room led to the back porch, since the house sat on a gentle slope. Both my mom and my brother had a habit of getting up in the night to use the bathroom. I knew this well because I was always a light sleeper, and they never bothered to close the door. But that particular night, my brother had almost made it to his room when he turned around, walked back toward the bathroom, and said, "I think I will go before bed. I have been too scared to come down here the last few nights." I keep seeing a man in a striped shirt standing at the end of the hallway. I am not sure whether my mom thought he was just trying to spook us with a ghost story, or whether she was too half asleep to process what he had actually said. Either way, she did not react. I, on the other hand, was absolutely terrified. From that night on, I started sprinting from the top of the stairs to my bedroom door every single night, too afraid to look toward that end of the hallway or at the glass in those doors. Fast forward about 10 years. I was around 18 and sitting in my mom's car. We were talking about a dog we had briefly owned when I was little, remembering all the silly things he used to do. Then out of nowhere, my mom said, "Do you remember when I opened the door for the police officers and he ran straight into the kitchen and tore open that big bag of food?" I stopped cold. In all the years we lived in that house, I had never once known us to call the police. I asked her what she was talking about. She looked at me with this expression like she had just let something slip that she never intended to say out loud. She said, "Oh, right. I never told you about that. You were too young." One night I woke up to a noise outside the bedroom window, and there was a man standing there looking directly at me. She told me how she turned on the light, and the man ran. She grabbed her father's handgun, called the police, and waited. She said she could not remember every detail she had given the officers, but it was something like a tall white man, striped shirt, jeans, short dark hair. She said the officers told her the description matched someone they had been looking for in the area. It turned out he had escaped from prison where he had been serving time for murder. I know that hearing both of those stories back to back makes the connection seem obvious, but it was not until I was in my mid-20s that I actually put it all together. My brother, without knowing it, had been warning us about a killer who had been watching our house for several nights in a row. He thought he was seeing a ghost. He was actually the only one who noticed the real danger. Last Monday, my colleagues and I got back to the hotel after a long day of work. My co-worker, Claire, and I were walking to our rooms when I unlocked my door and immediately noticed someone in the bathroom. I said hello. No answer. My first thought was housekeeping. And then I saw her holding my bag with my belongings inside it. I turned to Claire and said, "There is a woman in my room." Then I looked at the stranger and asked her what she was doing with my things. What happened next is a little blurry because I was in shock, but she was mumbling something about her key still working, that the key had worked. That was how she got in. She was clearly rattled because she had been caught. She dropped my bags and started digging through her own purse and a white plastic bag she was carrying. Claire was standing right behind me, watching the whole thing unfold. The woman was shifting around and moving toward the exit, so I asked what was in the plastic bag because I thought it might contain my belongings. She said, No, this is mine, only mine. I will show you." And she did. I did not see anything of mine inside. I was so stunned that I let her walk out. I stepped into the room and it was completely ransacked. I did a quick scan. All my electronics were still there. Then I went into the bathroom and found my clothes, swimsuit, and other items shoved haphazardly into my bags. She had even stuffed my passport in there. Then I looked at the sink and realized she had been going through my medication. Something came over me and I just wanted it back, so I ran out to look for her. I checked the laundry room, walked the hallways, looked everywhere. She was gone. Claire and I went to the front desk and then called the police. We went back to the room to wait, and that is when I noticed something on the bed. A small metal bat, just a little bigger than a souvenir baseball bat, with a small flashlight attached to the end. She had left it behind in her rush to get out. There was also a necklace on the floor that must have fallen out of her bag in the chaos. I was most panicked about the medication because I thought she had taken it. The officers arrived, took our statements, and walked through the room. That is when I noticed something I had not paid attention to before. There was plaster dust in the sink. I pointed it out to the officers, but nobody could figure out where it had come from. They checked the door and windows and found no sign of forced entry. Their working theory was that she had a duplicate key card, though the front desk insisted that was impossible. One officer called 2 more colleagues, thinking the woman might still be nearby. But once the statements were done, there was not much more they could do, and they left. I finally sat down to call my family, and while I was on the phone, I kept staring at that plaster dust in the sink. It would not leave my mind. I looked at the dust. I looked at the mirror above the sink, and then it clicked. I called Claire in and asked her to help me take the mirror off the wall. We lifted it down, and behind it was a hole, big enough for a desperate person to squeeze through. I asked whether I should call the police again. My manager looked out the window and said there were still 2 patrol cars in the parking lot. I went down to tell them. One officer rolled her eyes, but a younger one said he would come take a look. They both came up, looked at the hole, and found inside it a pillow, blankets, cigarettes, clothing, and toothbrushes. This woman had been living in the wall behind my mirror for who knows how long. She had access to me in my room at any time she wanted. There was a crawl space between 2 rows of rooms, about 60 centimeters wide. The first officer came back on the radio, and all I heard in response was a completely stunned reaction. He came back up, photographed everything, and was just as shaken as the rest of us. We packed our things and left immediately. The most disturbing part is that she had probably been there for a very long time. The last time we stayed at that same hotel, I kept catching the faint smell of cigarette smoke and assumed it was drifting through the ventilation from a neighboring room. It was not. She had been smoking right behind my mirror. She also had access to other rooms. The holes in the walls were left over from a renovation the hotel never properly sealed. They had simply covered them with mirrors. She could come and go into other guests' rooms whenever they were out. This happened to me about 5 years ago, and even now I get chills just thinking about it. At the time, I was renting a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was cozy, affordable, and had its own kind of charm. The one thing I never liked was the basement underneath the house. The access hatch was in the laundry room, a square wooden panel flush with the floor, locked from the outside. I never once opened it. I figured it was just pipes, cobwebs, and the usual basement creepiness down there. One evening I got home late from work. It had been a long day, and all I wanted was a shower and bed. I walked in and noticed something odd. The light in the laundry room was on. I was sure I had turned it off that morning. I chalked it up to being rushed and distracted, switched it off, and moved on. That night, around 2 a.m, a quiet sound woke me up. At first I thought it was the wind, but lying there and listening, I realized the sound was coming from the laundry room. A soft, rhythmic knocking. My heart started beating faster. I went back and forth about whether to get up and check or just stay put and hope it stopped on its own. Curiosity won. I grabbed my phone as a flashlight and crept down the hall. I opened the laundry room door and it was silent. But then I saw it. The hatch to the basement was sitting slightly open. My stomach dropped. I clearly remembered it being locked. There was no way it had opened on its own. I tried to stay calm and told myself some animal had probably gotten in. I pushed the hatch firmly shut and set a heavy box of laundry detergent on top of it. Then I went back to bed. The next day, I called my landlord and asked if there had ever been any issues with pests. He seemed surprised and said nobody had reported anything like that. He promised to send someone to check. That night, I double-checked the hatch and even pushed a chair on top of it for good measure. No sounds came, and I started to feel a little silly about how scared I had been. But around 3 a.m, I was woken up by the creak of my bedroom door. I froze. My door only creaks when it is pushed open slowly, and I had definitely closed it before going to sleep. I lay completely still, barely breathing, and heard quiet footsteps moving into the room. My phone was on the nightstand, just out of reach. The footsteps stopped right beside my bed. I could feel a presence, soft breathing in the dark. I pulled together every bit of courage I had, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it across the room. Crouched on the floor was a man. Pale, hollow face, wide eyes that did not blink. He looked just as startled as I was. I screamed and ran out of the room and straight out the front door to my neighbors. I pounded on their door until they let me in. They called the police. When the officers arrived, they found him still inside the house, hiding in the basement. Down there was a small mattress, food wrappers, and a collection of random items he had apparently taken from my home. The lock on the hatch had been forced. Everything pointed to him having lived under my house for at least several days, possibly longer. The worst part. The officers told me they found a notebook with detailed notes about me. He had been logging my routine, what time I left for work, what time I came home, even what I was wearing each day. There was also a list of plans, but the officers would not tell me exactly what was written there. I moved out the following week and stayed with friends until I found a new place. To this day, I still do not know how he got in there in the first place, or how long he had been watching me before I noticed anything at all.